Hey guys, this is Ben from Road to VR, and I am here with Jason, who is the head of Oculus Studios. Jason, thank you for being here.
Of course.
So, can you tell the people who are watching this where are we right now and what are we doing?
Sure, we are at Game Day. We are showing the world all of the Oculus launch titles, 30 of them, as well as a bunch of additional Oculus titles that will be coming out on Rift over the next year or so in the future. There are a lot more titles we're not showing today, but these are 30 launch titles and the additional titles we have coming for the rest of the year or so.
And how many games can we expect for the Rift this year?
You know, it's really hard for us to give a number because there are a lot of independent developers out there that are working on prototypes and doing things on their own. They could submit it to our store. We've been taken by surprise how many launch titles we have that come in at the last minute. Someone goes, oh, how do I submit this to your store? And you're like, this is amazing. You've been working on this for how long? And we didn't even know it existed. So it's really hard to say how many titles we'll have. What I will say is Oculus Studios is working on more than 20 titles for 2016 alone, and a bunch of them are here tonight. I think 9 are here today.
So some of the games here, as I understand it, looking in from the outside, seem to have actually started development sort of inside Oculus, but then became either the IP was handed off or became kind of a little bit more outside as their own company. Lucky's Tale, the way that I read it from the outside was that they had actually started inside of Oculus. Was that correct?
Lucky's Tale started on their own. Playful decided they thought VR was really cool when they saw the Kickstarter of Oculus, of the Rift, and they went out and they started working on it. It eventually came to Oculus. Oculus thought it was fantastic. This is before my time. Signed a producing deal with them, and that is part of now my group working on that game. It's very hard to say. Every game has its own relationship, right? I would say this in general. There are 4 types of games here tonight. One type of game, third party, Ubisoft, or you have Project Cars. Ubisoft did Eagle Flight or Project Cars. Worked on it on their own money, their own production. They brought it to us at the end. That's one type. You have our indie fund, which is over $10 million. Those are games that are done by indies, 100% the indies work, but they need a little help, and we help them out with that. Both of those are non-exclusive, can go wherever they want. Then you have my titles, which are Oculus Studio titles, and those are titles that wouldn't have existed otherwise, that are relatively large titles, and we've gone to developers that were really interested in VR, couldn't fund them themselves, or for whatever reason wanted a producer, and we've gone and funded a lot of those titles. As I said, over 20 of them in 2016. Those titles, because the amount of production we've put into them, resources, and of course cash, those titles we consider first-party titles, even though they're being done by external studios. They own the IP. If they want to take that IP somewhere in the future, the Climb 2, Chronos 2, somewhere else, awesome, but for now, because of the resources we put into them, those are exclusive to us. The 4th type of title is extremely rare. I have 2 internal developers who prototype stuff, and sometimes it's genius, and we put resources behind it. Hero Bound and Dead and Buried fall under that. That's Andrew and Ryan. So ignoring that, there's 3 main types of titles that we do.
Okay. And Hero Bound in particular, that was one that felt internal, but now it is an external developer is doing Hero Bound Spirit Champion, and then there's another developer doing the Gladiator, right?
2 different developers, yeah, absolutely. So Andrew and Ryan are two people, right? Andrew and Ryan. Together they can prototype, but they can't bring out a game the size of Hero Bound Spirit Champions. They couldn't do Dead and Buried alone as well. So what I've tended to do is say, genius idea, you guys go off prototype, you're really good at that, let me find some muscle to get this game actually finally produced. The muscle that did the first Hero Bound and Hero Bound Spirit Champions then said, we're in love with VR, we want to make Chronos. So the same team that kind of learned their VR chops, if you will, in Hero Bound are now gone on to work on Chronos, which is also a launch title for us for Rift. Dead and Buried right now is internal, it's the 2 guys, but they have contractors, one in Estonia, one in Brazil, they have a Mexican outsourcing team. It's any way you can get a good game made, it's a good game, right? Yeah. So we put it together however it happens.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you said, it's a different relationship for kind of each partner.
Absolutely.
How do you approach, you've been in games for a long time, how do you approach VR differently, if at all, when it comes to identifying what's going to be good and deciding who to work with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. VR is brand new. We really don't know where it's going. What we do know is it has an incredible amount of potential, but it also has certain challenges that come with that potential. Everybody has heard by now that certain types of locomotion in VR are uncomfortable. We're nibbling at the edges of that. I think in the long run we'll get around it, but for right now you have to be careful. Also, some things you would think would be really fun in VR turn out not to be that fun. And some things just surprise us and come out of nowhere and are really fun. So the way we approach things in VR is we prototype. We prototype far more seriously than most producers or publishers would. A publisher in console space can mentally wrap their head around a game on paper and say, this will work if done well. In VR, we don't have that kind of history to build upon. So what we do is we say, prototype this. If it's good, great. If it's not, we'll throw it out. In many cases, we go forward with it. In some cases, quite a number of cases, we say, okay, that didn't work, what else can we try? Developers eventually strike on something they love, and those are the games you're seeing here today. The graveyard of stuff that was experimented on that didn't quite work, it's irrelevant, right? It's in the past.
So do you have people come to you and say, I have this awesome idea, and you've had times where you had to say, we thought that'd be awesome too, but alas, it's not quite great. We tried it, and we don't think it works that well.
That does happen. We've also had times where everybody thought it was great and it doesn't work out. And we've had times where I've said, yeah, I'm not sure that's going to work in VR, and the developer has gone off, believed in themselves, and made it happen, and I've been wrong. So it really is early days, and we're learning as we go, and we'll continue to experiment until we, find everything that works.
Do you think Oculus has a different set of things that they're looking for in terms of VR games for their platform that differentiates them from other platforms out there?
Well, I don't know that the games we're looking at are for different, but I will say this. Oculus was not going to release consumer hardware until it got a volume of quality games that would justify a consumer's purchase of the hardware. So today you're looking at 41 titles here, 30 of them at launch. This is not the entire list of titles, but these are real games. These are not demos. This is not middleware. These are not experiences that last 5 minutes. These are full games. That's not to say there aren't great experiences also out there. There's all the stuff from Oculus Studios, which is incredible, but we wanted to make sure that there was solid games that justified the purchase. So right now we've been focusing on that for Gamepad, because that's what we're launching with, and we feel confident we're there today. I feel confident that we will get there on motion control, but we will not launch it until we feel we have that quality volume of games that justifies a launch. We're not launching a dev kit.
And so in that sense, is the touch hardware, would you say, ready and waiting for games, or the other way around, or in parallel?
Well, I would say that we're actively prototyping games and learning new things. Dead and Buried showed the first time here. You can see many amazing things that are being shown the first time. VR Sports Challenge, I don't know if you played that, but it feels like you're throwing a basketball. It's pretty awesome, right? It took a long time for the developer to get to that. So we're constantly making the software work, and at the same time, we're giving feedback to the hardware that's making the hardware better, and they're improving and iterating. Both are happening at the same time. When they're both ready, that's when Oculus will launch.
How do you avoid telling a developer or somebody, sorry, no, and then they go off and make something great and you didn't even get to have a chance? Is this a concern for you, or is it so early there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people are grabbing onto?
Look, I'm always open with the fact that I'm not perfect. I have a pretty good sense of games. I've been doing it for 30 years, but VR is a very new beast, and I'm shooting from the hip, as is everybody else. There are things that I don't want to fund to prototype, but I always tell developers, at the end of the day, the only people that can say if this works or not is the consumer. So either prototype it and give it to your friends, your relations, see what they think of it, or bring it to market on your own. There's nothing that I would ever say, that will never work, you'd be a fool to do it, because it's a fool that thinks they have that kind of perspective. I don't. I have to make decisions. I can't fund every game, to be sure, but there are always going to be surprises, and I will be wrong.
Now, everything here that we're seeing today is a game. We know that Oculus has funded some video content. Are we going to see video content at the Rift's launch?
Yes, you will see video content at the Rift launch, a good deal of it.
And does that fall under what you're doing, or is that a separate, somebody else handling that within Oculus?
Just like with games, a lot of it is coming from my studio. We have a relationship with Felix and Paul. We've done Jurassic World video. We've done a LeBron James video. We did the introduction to VR. We're doing something called Nomad. So we're doing a lot with them. But there's also a lot of independents out there, just like there are in the game space, that are doing their own work. You have the Jaunts of the world, the Verses of the world. They're all out there doing their own stuff. We welcome that to the platform. The platform succeeds only when they bring their content and amplify whatever I can do internally.
Now, so as a, let's say, devil's advocate, I would ask, so why not show any video content here?
That just wasn't the focus. GDC is a game conference. We wanted to show gamers that we have enough game content that if that's all they're interested in, we have enough for them to, buy. We have enough to launch. My guess is, even if you're a diehard gamer, you're going to put on one of these 360 videos and you'll try another one and you'll try another one. But I don't want I don't want to say to you, you need to see all this and it counts for a gamer. I want gamers to be perfectly happy with just the games we're bringing out. Everything else is a bonus.
And just to take it back for one more question to what we were talking about earlier, the difficulty with identifying what content's going to be great. You said there are some things you thought just wouldn't work but turned out to totally surprise you and you ran with it. Can you give an interesting example of one of those times?
Well, I can't give an example of anything on the, unfortunately a lot of the times that stuff either hasn't been announced or it isn't here. But let me give this example for you. Eagle Flight, which is a title we're showing here, done by Ubisoft, entirely on their own. They never came to Oculus and asked, they did their own R&D, is the type of title that you would really be highly suspect would not work. It has a lot of locomotion, you're flying an eagle through Paris, you're swooping down, going through tight spaces and bell towers, in and out of canyons. I don't know if you've played this, but it's the kind of thing that makes somebody who's putting their own money into VR say, that sounds risky. They did a lot of R&D. They were extremely patient. They've come up with things that today other developers here are saying, this may be the foundation of locomotion working in VR. It is an unbelievable triumph. The title is fantastic. It doesn't make you feel motion sick, or at least a lot less people are motion sick than you would think. It's fundamentally amazing. I might have, had they come to me, said, not sure if I want to bet my dollar on that, but that was a dollar well bet.
Great. Well, we hope that the remainder of very exciting and innovative games that do something new for VR get found and don't get lost. So it's good that you guys are funding stuff.
Yeah, well, the good news is over time, as the consumer base expands and there's a bigger and bigger opportunity in the business, you'll need an Oculus Studios less. Developers will be able to say, I can risk to make this title because there's this, if I believe in it, there's this big base that will buy it. So over time, everything will get tried. We'll go into little corners of VR that no one's explored yet. I don't even think we've seen, it's not 1% of what we're going to see come out of VR today. Having said that, what we've seen today is awesome for a launch lineup with absolutely no conditionals after that. If you're buying hardware, this is a great launch lineup.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, great chatting with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.